Every small town has its secrets, but some secrets are just folks trying to survive the best way they know how. This story came to me the way most true stories do, over coffee that's been sitting on the burner too long, in a diner where the vinyl seats still carry the impression of everyone who's ever sat there. It's about what happens when grief makes strangers of families and families of strangers. About a man who had everything and lost the only thing that mattered. About a woman who never had much but knew how to make do. Most of all, it's about how sometimes the Lord works through courthouse papers and desperate promises, turning what looks like the end of everything into the beginning of something nobody saw coming. In a little Oregon town where everybody knows your business, but nobody knows your heart, two broken people are about to discover that salvation sometimes comes disguised as surrender. The fountain pen shook in Rowan Pike's weathered hand, making ink puddles on the marriage certificate like spilled coffee on the church bulletin. The courthouse smelled the same as it had since 1953. Lemon oil on old wood, carbon paper, and 40 years of other folks' promises and problems. His brother Silas checked his wristwatch again, third time in as many minutes. Their daddy's old Rolex, the one that used to catch the light during Sunday sermons back when they still attended. 71 hours, 40 minutes, Silas said, his voice carrying that particular satisfaction of a man holding 4 aces. Sign now, or Noah's foundation becomes mine to dissolve. The waitress from Mercy's Diner, Grace, her name tag read, pushed through the heavy oak doors carrying forgotten witness forms. Coffee stains marked her uniform sleeve like medals from a breakfast rush. She stopped short, taking in the scene. 2 men who shared their daddy's jawline, but nothing else. Legal papers scattered across Eleanor's desk like bad news at a church social, and the kind of tension that preceded either harsh words or harder choices. Sir? She moved toward Rowan with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd spent years reading trouble in the way folks held themselves. You feeling all right? You're looking a mite peaked. Her fingers found his wrist. Not casual concern, but the precise touch of someone who knew their way around taking a pulse. The kind of knowing that comes from training, not just sympathy. I'm fine, he managed, though the word cracked like thin ice on a stock pond. She studied the papers visible on the desk, her eyes tracking across the legal language with unexpected understanding. Marriage certificate, last will and testament, Noah's Foundation for Pediatric Care, 10,000 young ones served annually. This is about the Children's Medical Foundation? She set down the witness forms carefully, like her grandmother's good china. The one that pays for those treatments the insurance companies won't touch? Silas laughed, sharp and bitter as chicory coffee. Well now, the waitress can read. Isn't that something? He pulled out one of those new portable phones, fingers working the buttons. Grace Ember, 29 years old, former nursing student at Portland. Had to quit in year 3. Your sister took ill, didn't she? The cancer? Grace's face went stiff as starched Sunday clothes, but her hands stayed steady as her grandmother's during canning season. That's not your concern. Everything's my concern when this much money's involved. Silas turned the little screen toward her. Harper Lee, 8 years old, your sister's girl, has the breathing troubles, bit of difficulty learning her letters the regular way. $47,000 in doctor bills, $200 a month for the next 19 years, if my arithmetic's right. The fluorescent lights hummed like hornets in August. Somewhere down the hall, a couple laughed. Real marriage, real joy. Here, 3 people stood frozen like a photograph nobody wanted to keep. You leave her be, Rowan said, but his voice lacked the authority it once carried. 3 years of keeping to himself had worn away his ability to protect anybody, including his own self. Actually, Silas smiled, the expression reshaping his face into something that would have made their mother weep. She's perfect. Local girl, hard luck story. Nobody'd suspect her of gold digging. I'll pay you $100,000 cash money, Miss Ember. Marry my brother for 1 year. Save his foundation." Grace looked at that money offer like it was a snake in her garden. Then she did something neither brother expected. She laughed, not harsh, but tired, like she'd heard every version of this song before. "You think I'd sell myself for money?" She pulled a notebook from her purse, the kind waitresses use for orders, but the pages she showed were covered with medical terms, prescriptions, treatment plans written in careful school teacher's script. "I've been keeping Harper alive on tips and the grace of God for 3 years. You think your money would make me—" She stopped, looked at Rowan, really looked at him, the way folks used to look at each other before television made everyone strangers. Later she would tell Eleanor that this was the moment she recognized him, not his face or his money, but the particular tiredness in his shoulders, the same tiredness she'd carried since her sister drew her last breath, the weight of continuing to breathe when breathing felt like betraying the departed. "You lost a child," she said, not asking. Rowan's hand moved to his chest, where something circled his wrist under the flannel work shirt. "How did you—" "You're holding that pen like it's one of those papers that says not to keep someone alive with machines. I've seen that grip before. Held a pen that same way myself once." She turned to Silas. "I won't take your money, but I'll make you a different arrangement." Both men waited. Eleanor, bless her heart, had stopped pretending to file papers and watched openly as a barn cat watching mice. "Harper needs real insurance. The kind that covers the specialists down in Portland. Those new treatments they're trying. The therapy that might help her speak up more." Grace pulled out a folder, worn as an old hymnal held together with rubber bands. "She needs money for the special schooling that actually helps young ones like her. And I need to finish my nursing degree. Just 1 year left." "That would cost more than—" Silas began. "I don't want money in my pocket. I want a future for Harper." She looked at Rowan again. 1 year. Legal marriage, protection for Harper. You keep your foundation running. I get a chance to save the only family I have left. Nobody's selling anything. We're trading survival, like folks used to trade eggs for flour. Rowan found himself studying her hands. Not soft, not manicured. Burn scar on the left from a coffee pot. Calluses that came from holding a scared child through long nights. These were hands that had already paid their dues. "You don't know what you're agreeing to," he said quietly. "I know you feed that dog of yours at exactly 6:47 every morning," Grace replied. "Same time, never changes. That's medicine schedule discipline. Someone trained you to keep that schedule." She paused. Someone small. For the first time in 3 years, someone had seen Noah in his routines instead of his absence. Aurora was in the truck, nose pressed to the window, fogging the glass with patient breath. Noah's dog first. His now, though it never felt like ownership so much as shared sorrow between God's creatures. "She won't take money, but she'll take marriage?" Silas seemed genuinely puzzled. "That's either foolish or wise as Solomon." "It's practical," Grace said. "Harper's been watching me work myself into the ground for 3 years. At least this way, if something happens to me, she's protected." The kind of dark humor that came from too many nights in hospital waiting rooms, holding vigil with the angels. Eleanor cleared her throat. "If you're going to do this thing, better do it now. I've got my lunch at noon, and Betty's saving my usual table at the senior center. They're serving chicken and dumplings today." Such ordinary concerns in the midst of life-changing moments. But that was living, wasn't it? Catastrophe and casseroles, heartbreak and ham dinners. "I need to call Harper's school," Grace said. "Tell them she'll have new insurance cards coming." "I need to—" Rowan stopped. "Need to what? Prepare? Pack? Pray?" "You need to sign," Silas said, but for once his voice lacked meanness. Something else there. Tiredness, maybe, or recognition that this chess game was ending in a way neither of them expected. Rowan signed, his real name for the first time in 3 years. The letters felt foreign, like writing in his grandfather's old German script. Grace signed next. Steady hands, clear letters, the kind of penmanship the nuns used to teach. Then the witness line. Eleanor signed with the fountain pen she'd used for 40 years of other folks' beginnings and endings. "Do you have rings?" Eleanor asked, knowing full well they didn't. Rowan pulled off his daddy's wedding band, the one he'd worn on his right hand since the funeral, unable to throw it away, unable to wear it proper. "This will work." It was too large for Grace's finger. She closed her fist to keep it from sliding off. "That's that, then," Eleanor said. "You may kiss the bride, or shake hands, or nod at each other. I'm not particular after 40 years of this." They shook hands. Brief, businesslike, but Rowan noticed Grace's hand was steady, while his still trembled like leaves before a storm. Outside, the Oregon rain had started, not the dramatic cloudbursts of picture shows, but the steady, patient rain that could last for days, the kind that made everything green, but nothing quite clean. Before we continue, please leave a like and subscribe. Let me know which city you're watching from. Now let's get back to the story. The truck's heater wheezed like an old man's chest in winter, pushing out air that smelled of wet dog and motor oil that needed changing 2,000 miles ago. Aurora's tail thumped against the bench seat as Grace climbed in, her uniform still damp from the courthouse dash through rain. Rowan's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. The vinyl cracked from summers that used to be hotter, winters that used to mean something different. "Harper's school is on Maple," Grace said. "Best take the frontage road. Main Street turns into a river when it rains like this." The windshield wipers scraped against glass, rubber worn down to memory. Through the smeared arc, Willow Creek showed itself. 5 for lease signs on Main Street. Hank's Hardware boarded up with plywood that was already warping. The old Chevron station where folks used to gather now converted to a food bank with hours posted on cardboard. "Population's down to 2,500, Grace said, following his gaze. "Mill cut another shift last month. The Hendersons moved to their daughter's place in Bend." They passed Mercy's diner. Through the window, foggy with steam from the kitchen, Mabel carried the coffee pot to the same 4 farmers who'd been solving the world's problems there since Reagan was president. The normalcy of it made Rowan's chest tight as wet leather. "That where you live?" He nodded toward the apartment above the diner, windows dark, curtains that hadn't been changed since the bicentennial. "Lived. Past tense now, I suppose." Grace twisted the too large wedding ring around her finger. "Mrs. Jenkins sees everything from her porch. She'll have the whole town knowing before supper." The elementary school came into view. Single-story brick, built when Eisenhower was president. Portable classrooms scattered like mushrooms after rain. Grace's breathing changed. Shorter, like climbing stairs that weren't there. "Harper doesn't talk much at school," she said, "since Claire passed. The counselor calls it selective mutism. I call it a broken heart that hasn't figured out how to beat right yet." Inside the school office, the secretary, Mrs. Chen, according to her desk plate, looked up from attendance sheets. Her eyes tracked from Grace's coffee-stained uniform to Rowan's mill clothes to their hands, which weren't touching but stood closer than strangers would. "I need Harper Ember pulled from class," Grace said. "Family matter." Small footsteps in the hallway, dragging like they carried more weight than 8 years should hold. Harper appeared in the doorway, purple backpack hanging off one shoulder, inhaler visible in the mesh pocket. Her eyes, same green as Grace's but older somehow, took in the scene. "Aunt Grace? Why is the sad man from the diner here?" The sad man. Not that man or the stranger, the sad man. Like sorrow was his name, written across him clear as print. Aurora barked from the truck, sharp, insistent, almost like calling. Harper pressed her small face against the truck's rain-spotted window, her breath fogging the glass in little circles that matched Aurora's on the other side. The dog's nose touched the same spot, tail beating against the seat in a rhythm steady as a grandfather clock. "Is that your dog?" Harper's voice came out thin as tissue paper. She was my son's dog. Rowan's throat closed around the words like a fist. Now she's mine. Harper's hand found Grace's, fingers threading through like they'd done it 1,000 times. Like how Aunt Grace was Mama's sister, and now she's mine? The rain picked up, drumming on the truck's roof like impatient fingers on a table. Grace helped Harper into the back seat, clicking the seatbelt with the automatic movements of someone who'd done this in the dark, in a hurry, in the middle of the night when breathing attacks came. Aurora twisted around to study the child. Those blue eyes. Noah had begged for a blue-eyed dog, said they looked like the sky in his picture books, examining Harper with an intensity that made Rowan's ribs ache. "Where are we going?" Harper asked, her small fingers already reaching through the seats to touch Aurora's fur, gentle as butterfly wings. Grace looked at Rowan. The question sat between them, heavy as wet wool. "My place," he said, "to work out the particulars." "Are you married now?" Harper's question cut straight through like her mama's scissors through fabric. "Yes," Grace said. "Why?" The child's directness left no room for the comfortable lies adults told. Grace turned in the seat, vinyl squeaking under her weight. "Because Mr. Pike needs help with something important, and we need help too." Sometimes folks help each other in ways that don't make sense at first, like when Mrs. Henderson watches you even though we can't pay her proper. Harper absorbed this, her fingers finding Aurora's ear, rubbing the soft spot that made the dog's back leg twitch. "Is it like when Mama married Frank even though she didn't love him, because we needed insurance?" Grace's shoulders went rigid. "That was different, honey." "Was it?" Harper's green eyes, too knowing for 8 years, stayed on Rowan's face in the rearview mirror. The cabin materialized through the rain like something from Rowan's grandfather's stories. Cedar shingles gone dark with moisture. Moss claiming the north side patient as time. A structure more returning to forest than standing against it. He'd paid cash 3 years ago, sight unseen, needing only distance from California hospitals, and Noah's baseball glove still hanging on the closet door. Inside smelled of coffee grounds and WD-40 and something else. Emptiness, if emptiness had a smell, like a church on Tuesday. Newspapers stacked by the wood stove, dated but unread, yellowing like old letters. A single plate in the dish rack. One chair pulled up to the table, the other 3 pushed against the wall, like witnesses dismissed from a trial. Harper stood in the doorway, purple backpack dripping steadily on the threshold that had worn smooth from boots that no longer walked through. Aurora stationed herself beside the child, patient as furniture, watching. "There's a second bedroom," Rowan said, the words strange as foreign currency. Nobody had used it. Boxes stacked there, things that burned to look at but couldn't be thrown away. Like keeping a tooth that ached. "You can have it, both of you." "Where will you sleep?" Harper asked, already cataloging the space the way children do, noticing the cobwebs in corners, the way the floorboards creaked near the kitchen, the coffee ring stains on the counter like Olympic rings of grief. "Couch suits me fine." Grace's fingers brushed his arm, brief as a moth landing. "We need to discuss practical matters. Harper, honey, can you stay here with Aurora for a spell?" The child nodded, already kneeling beside the dog, whispering something that made Aurora's ears swivel forward, like satellite dishes finding signal. Rowan led Grace to the kitchen, really just an extension of the main room separated by a counter made from lumber that remembered being trees. She pulled out her notebook, the one from the courthouse, pages warped from coffee spills and rain and tears probably, though she'd never admit the last. Harper's medications. She spread papers across the counter like dealing cards for solitaire. Breathing treatment twice daily, morning and night. Emergency inhaler always within reach. She knows to keep it close, but sometimes forgets when she's drawing. These are her triggers. Dust, sudden cold, stress especially. Her learning troubles mean she needs routine. Same breakfast, same bedtime, same...
6:47, Rowan interrupted. Grace looked up, question in the tilt of her head. I understand routine, he said.
Noah had medications every 6 hours, starting at 6:47 in the morning. IV antibiotics. Had to be precise. Aurora still expects breakfast at that exact time. Grace's fingers stilled on the papers, pressing flat like she was trying to iron out more than wrinkles. How long was he sick? 2 years from diagnosis. Maybe 6 months before that when we called it growing pains. Claire had 3 years. The last 6 months were... She stopped, reorganized the papers, though they didn't need it. The last 6 months, she wasn't Claire anymore. The pain medications, they changed her. Harper still asks why Mama got mean at the end. They stood there in the kitchen that had never really been a kitchen, just a place to make coffee and heat soup from cans, medical schedules between them like a language only they spoke. From the main room came Harper's voice, soft but actual words, more than Grace had mentioned hearing at school in months. My mama went to heaven too. Do you know a boy named Noah there? Aurora made a sound, not quite bark, not quite whine, something between understanding and sorrow. Aunt Grace says heaven is different for everyone, like how some folks like chocolate ice cream and some like vanilla. Maybe your Noah has a heaven with dogs and baseball and no medicine time. Rowan's hand gripped the counter edge hard enough to leave marks in his palm, the wood grain pressing deep, like trying to hold on to something already gone. There's something else, Grace said quietly, pulling him back to the immediate world. She pulled out another paper, official-looking, with the kind of seal that meant trouble. Eviction notice, 30 days. The landlord's son is moving back from Portland. Lost his job at the bank there. She showed him the paper, numbers at the bottom circled in pencil. I've been looking for 6 months. Everything requires first, last, security deposit. That's $3,000 minimum, and I barely make rent as it is. That's settled now, Rowan said. You'll stay here. For a year? Then what? Harper needs stability. She's already lost her mama, her home twice, The front door burst open hard enough to bang against the wall. Silas stood in the doorway like something out of a storm warning, rain dripping from his expensive coat that cost more than most folks' cars, cell phone in one hand, folder thick with papers in the other. His eyes took in the domestic scene, Harper on the floor with Aurora, Grace and Rowan in the kitchen like actual married folks discussing household matters. How touching, he said, water pooling around his Italian leather shoes that had never walked through honest mud before today. Playing house already? The ink's barely dry on the license. Harper scrambled behind Aurora. The dog rose to her feet, smooth as water, positioning herself between the child and this newcomer, who smelled of cologne and courthouse paper and something else. Anger, old as fossils. Not aggressive, but ready. The same way she used to position herself between Noah and anybody who brought needles. What do you want, Silas? Rowan moved from the kitchen, putting himself between his brother and the others like Aurora had done. Like maybe they were all learning to be shields for each other. The lawyers need proof of cohabitation within 48 hours. Silas held up the folder, fat with documents. Shared lease agreement, joint bank account, something that proves this isn't just paper marriage for convenience. We just got married 2 hours ago, which is why I'm here, to help. Silas's smile could have curdled milk. I've already had the paperwork drawn up. Joint account established at First National. This cabin transferred to both names. Mighty generous of you, brother, sharing your assets with a stranger. He spread papers across the coffee table that had probably been here since the cabin was built, each document marked with those little yellow flags that lawyers used, like surrender flags for where to sign your life away. This gives me equal ownership of property I've never seen before today. Grace moved closer, reading upside down, a skill from years of reading medical charts from the wrong side of hospital beds. Community property state, Silas said, pulling out his phone to show something. What's his is yours now, all $2 billion of it. Technically, though most of that's tied up in the foundation. Harper made a small sound, like air leaving a balloon. Not fear, exactly, but recognition. She'd heard that tone before. Adults discussing things that would upend everything while pretending children couldn't understand. "I don't want his money," Grace said firmly. "No, you want his insurance, his connections, his ability to save your niece." Silas turned his phone around, showed a screen full of numbers that might as well have been in Chinese for all the sense they made to regular folks. This is what Harper's treatments would cost without insurance. The new breathing treatments they're developing in Seattle, the special therapy, the schooling she needs. Grace's face went white as fresh paper. "That's more than you'll make in your lifetime waiting tables?" "Yes." Silas pocketed the phone. "So sign, make it legal, save the child." Aurora growled, low in her throat like distant thunder. Harper's hand had tightened in the dog's fur, knuckles white as knobs on a dresser drawer, and the dog responded to the child's distress like she'd been trained for it. "It's okay," Harper whispered to the dog, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "He's just scared too. Scared people sound mean sometimes, like when Mama was scared about dying." Everyone froze. The child had read Silas more accurately than any grown person would dare, seen through his expensive suit to something raw underneath. Silas's face did something complicated, a twitch that might have been memory of feeling, quickly smoothed like wrinkles from a shirt. His hand moved toward his chest, then stopped, fingers curling into a fist instead. "Just sign," he said. But the cruelty had leaked out of his voice like air from a punctured tire. "I have somewhere to be." Rowan signed first, his name looking foreign on the paper like someone else's signature he was copying from a sample. Grace signed next, her penmanship steady as a schoolteacher's despite everything. The ink hadn't dried before Silas gathered the papers, tapping them against the coffee table to align the edges just so. "Congratulations," Silas said, buttoning his coat with fingers that knew their way around destroying things neatly. "You're now officially each other's problem." He left without closing the door. Rain blew in sideways, carrying the smell of cedar and earthworms and autumn coming early. Aurora padded over and pushed the door shut with her nose, a trick Noah had taught her when his hands got too weak to turn doorknobs. "Why was that man so sad?" Harper asked, still pressed against Aurora's warmth. Grace and Rowan looked at each other across the room that suddenly felt smaller with 3 people and a dog in it. How did you explain adult cruelty born from loss to a child who already knew too much about losing? "He lost someone too," Grace said finally. "Sometimes hurt makes people mean. Like when Tommy Morrison pushed me at recess after his daddy left?" Harper's fingers found Aurora's collar, tracing the worn leather. "Mrs. Ashley said he was mad at the wrong person." "Something like that, honey." The afternoon light was already fading. October in Oregon meant darkness came early, stayed late. Grace looked around the cabin, cataloging what needed doing. The empty refrigerator, the dust on everything except the coffee maker and one chair, the way everything pointed to a life stopped mid-sentence. "We should get our things," she said, "while there's still light." The apartment above Mercy's diner smelled of other people's suppers and Grace's lavender soap, and something else. Leaving. 2 suitcases and 3 boxes held everything they owned. Harper's purple bedspread folded neat as a prayer. Claire's wedding photo, the one from her first marriage to Harper's real father, before cancer and Frank and insurance desperation. Grace's nursing textbooks, spine broken from reading, pages marked with sticky notes that had lost their stick. Mrs. Jenkins watched from her porch across the street, pretending to water plants that the rain had already drowned. By tomorrow morning, everyone would know Grace Ember had moved in with the hermit from the mill, the one who turned out to have money like those folks on television. "Is this all?" Rowan asked, looking at their life packed small enough to fit in his truck bed. "This is everything that matters," Grace said, then caught herself. "Everything we could carry." Harper clutched her purple backpack, the one held together with duct tape and hope. Inside, Rowan could see paper edges, drawings probably, the way Noah used to carry drawings everywhere like talismans against bad things happening. Back at the cabin, the second bedroom door opened on hinges that squealed for oil. Boxes stacked to the ceiling, labels in black marker that had faded but still readable. Noah's summer clothes, age 6. Noah's books, haven't read yet. Hospital things, don't open. Rowan grabs 2 boxes, muscles in his back protesting. 3 years of not moving things, of leaving everything exactly where it stopped mattering. The cardboard had gone soft in spots from humidity, threatening to spill contents that would hurt worse than broken glass.
"We don't need to,"
Grace started. "You need somewhere to sleep." He carried the boxes to the hallway, stacking them against the wall like fortification against memory. These needed moving anyway. But his hands shook, setting them down, and Grace saw. She saw everything, the way nurses learn to see what people don't say. Harper stood in the doorway, Aurora faithful beside her. "Can I help?" Before anyone could answer, she'd picked up a smaller box. The tape gave way, dried out from seasons of heat and cold. The box opened like something breathing out. Inside, a child's backpack. Dinosaurs printed on blue fabric. Price tag still attached. $24.99. From Walmart, back to school sale. "For kindergarten?" Harper asked, holding it carefully as eggs. Rowan stood frozen in the hallway, watching Harper hold the backpack Noah had picked out 2 weeks before the first symptoms. Before the headaches. Before the world tilted off its axis and never righted itself. He was excited about school. Rowan's voice came out rough as bark. Practiced writing his name for weeks. Capital N, small O-A-H. Harper studied the backpack with that serious expression children get when they recognize something important is happening. Then she carefully closed the box, found the tape in her purple supplies, and sealed it back up, neat as a present. "We should keep this safe," she said, "for when you want to remember the happy parts. Mama said you need to keep the happy parts close, or the sad parts get too heavy to carry." Grace watched Rowan's face do something complicated. Not quite crying, not quite smiling, something between that didn't have a name. That evening they moved through the cabin like polite strangers learning a new dance. Grace cooked from the groceries they'd bought. Nothing fancy, spaghetti with sauce from a jar, but it was the first hot meal that kitchen had seen in months. Harper set the table for 4, then caught herself, removed 1 plate. 3 is a good number, she said quickly. Like the 3 bears. They ate mostly quiet, just the sound of forks against plates that didn't match. Aurora lay under the table, her head on Harper's feet, waiting for something that might never come, but waiting anyway. "I'll take the couch," Grace said when the dishes were done, dried, put away in cupboards that had held one of everything for too long. "No." Rowan pulled sheets from a closet. They smelled of cedar and thyme. "You and Harper take the bedroom. I've been sleeping on that couch more than the bed anyway." "Since when?" Harper asked, already in her purple pajamas that were getting too small. Flood pants without the flood. "Since—" Rowan stopped. "How did you tell a child you'd been sleeping on couches for 3 years because beds reminded you of hospital beds, of watching your son sleep and wondering if he'd wake up?" "Since a while," he finished. Harper nodded like that made perfect sense. "Mama slept in the chair by the window her last month home. Said beds made her feel like she was practicing for the grave." Grace made a small sound, hand moving to her throat. "It's okay," Harper told her aunt. "Mama said truth is better than pretending, even when truth tastes bad." They settled Harper in the bed, Aurora curling up beside her without being asked, like the dog recognized another child who needed guarding. Grace sat on the edge, smoothing Harper's hair back from her forehead the way mothers and aunts have done since time began. "Tell me about the sad man's dog," Harper said, already drowsy. "Her name is Aurora," Grace said. "Like the northern lights. Like the princess, too. The sleeping one." Harper's eyes were already closing. "Maybe she was sleeping too, like the sad man. And now she's waking up." Grace stayed until Harper's breathing deepened. then found Rowan standing in a doorway she hadn't noticed before. A room with its door ajar, walls visible in the hallway light. Walls covered in children's drawings, hundreds of them. Stick figures labeled Daddy and Noah in shaky kindergarten letters. Pictures of dogs and trees and hospitals and angels, all mixed together like someone had turned a life inside out and hung it up to examine. "This is his room," Rowan said unnecessarily.
I keep everything here."
Grace stepped inside, careful as entering a church during service. One drawing stood out among the others, purple butterflies and blue sky, 2 names at the bottom. "Miss Claire and Noah," Grace read, her voice catching like cloth on a nail. "Purple is brave. Your sister knew him." Rowan pulled down the drawing with hands that shook. "She taught him art on Thursdays, the volunteer program at the children's ward." Grace took the paper, studied her sister's handwriting mixed with a child's printing. The date in the corner, 3 days before Noah died. 2 weeks before Claire's final admission. "She never said—" Grace stopped, remembering. Wait, she did. She talked about a little boy who loved dinosaurs and dogs, said he was teaching her to be brave. Through the window, headlights swept across the yard, then another pair, and another. The town had come to verify its gossip. Harper appeared in the doorway, Aurora beside her, both wakened by the sound of car doors slamming. "Why are all the people here?" Harper asked, pressing closer to Grace. Rowan looked through the window at the gathering crowd. Folks from the mill, from the diner, from church, probably, though he hadn't darkened those doors in 3 years. "Because small towns don't like secrets," he said quietly. "And we just gave them the biggest one in years." The doorbell rang, then knocking, then the doorbell again, insistent as Judgment Day. Aurora walked to the door and barked once. Not a warning, not a welcome, an announcement that something had changed in this house of grief, and the town had come to witness what that might mean. The knocking grew harder, rattling the door in its frame. Through the frosted glass, Rowan counted 3 shapes: Frank Sullivan's broad shoulders from the mill, Vera Jenkins' narrow frame, Tom Paulson from the town council wearing his official jacket like armor. "Best answer it," Grace said quietly. "They won't leave till they've had their say." Harper's fingers twisted in Aurora's fur. The dog stood steady between the child and the door, watchful as a lighthouse. Grace opened the door halfway, her body blocking the gap. "Evening, Frank." "Grace?" Frank's eyes traveled past her to Rowan, then to the boxes still stacked in the hallway. "Heard some interesting news today." "News travels." Grace kept her voice level as water. "Marriage license filed at 2:30. Silas Pike at the diner by 4, talking loud enough for the lunch crowd to hear." Vera's voice carried 40 years of small-town judgment, sharp as November frost. "Said his brother's worth more than this whole county combined." Tom pushed forward slightly, politician's instinct for finding the spotlight. "The town deserves answers. This affects all of us." "How exactly?" Rowan moved beside Grace, felt her shoulder steady against his arm. "Mill's been hanging by a thread for 2 years. If there's money that could save jobs, there isn't." The lie came out flat as day-old soda. Frank studied Rowan's face the way he'd study lumber for flaws. "Your brother says different. Says you're sitting on billions while we're all scrambling to make rent." Harper appeared between them, purple pajamas too small, wrists showing past the sleeves. "My aunt married him so I can breathe better, that's all." The 3 visitors looked down at the child. Vera's expression shifted, recognizing Harper from the diner. All those meals Grace barely touched, saving half for later. "That true?" Frank asked Grace directly. "It's legal. Filed proper at the courthouse." Not really an answer, but not a lie either. Legal and right aren't always the same thing. Vera's fingers worried at her raincoat buttons, plastic clicking like rosary beads. "My daughter needs work. Been looking since the hardware store closed. If there's money in this town being hidden while folks suffer, Aurora growled, low in her chest like distant thunder. Harper hadn't let go of the dog's fur, knuckles white, and Aurora responded to the child's rising fear. You should go. Rowan started closing the door. Frank's work boot blocked it. 3 years you've been here, eating at our diner, working at our mill, living like you're one of us. But you're not, are you? Never claimed to be. No, you just let us believe it. Let us think you were another man down on his luck, needing work, needing quiet. Tom's voice shifted to his election tone. While sitting on enough money to save everyone. Money doesn't work that way, doesn't it? Vera interrupted, her voice cracking like ice. My husband's insulin costs $800 a month. Mortgage is underwater since the mill cut wages. But you've been playing hermit while we drown. Grace's hand found Rowan's wrist, fingers automatically finding his pulse. The rhythm told her what his face didn't, heart racing like a spooked horse. Thursday night town meeting, Tom said. 7 o'clock. You'll attend and explain yourselves. Not a request. An order backed by 300 years of small-town enforcement. We'll be there, Grace answered before Rowan could refuse. The three exchanged looks, message delivered. They retreated through rain that had started again, headlights sweeping across windows as they departed. But more cars lined the street, watching, waiting. Rowan turned the deadbolt, the click loud as a gunshot in the sudden quiet. They hate us now, Harper said, matter of fact as stating the weather. They hate not knowing, Grace corrected, but her face suggested Harper might be closer to truth. The first week passed in strange rhythms, learning each other's edges. Rowan left for the mill at 5:30, coffee in the thermos Grace had found in the back of a cupboard, sandwich she'd made without asking what he wanted. Grace opened the diner at 6, though Mabel barely looked at her now, sliding the order pad across the counter like it might be contaminated. Harper caught the school bus at 7:15, Aurora watching from the window until it disappeared around the bend, then staying there like she expected it might come back. Evenings brought careful coordination. Grace studying at the kitchen table, anatomy textbooks she'd kept like some folks kept wedding dresses, for a future that might never come. Harper doing homework, pencil scratching against paper, occasionally asking for help with words that wouldn't settle right in her mind. Rowan fixing things that had broken during his 3-year absence from caring. Loose floorboards that squeaked like mice, faucets that dripped steady as grief, the coffee maker that only worked if you held the button just so. You don't have to fix everything, Grace said the third night, finding him under the kitchen sink, tools spread across cracked linoleum like surgical instruments. Need to keep busy, his voice echoed in the cabinet. Noah and I used to fix things together. His toy tools next to my real ones. Said he was helping. Harper appeared with her purple supply box, meant for art but holding a child's collection of useful things. I can help too. The simple offer, the echo of Noah it carried, made Rowan emerge too fast. His head struck copper pipe. The joint gave way. Water exploded across all three of them, cold as mountain streams. Grace grabbed towels while Rowan fought the shutoff valve, rusty from never being turned. Harper stood in the spray, arms spread wide, laughing. Actual laughter that made both adults freeze. When had they last heard her laugh without reserve? We're all wet! She spun in the water, purple pajamas soaked through. Aurora barked from the doorway, dancing at the edge of the flood, torn between joining the chaos and staying dry. Get changed before you catch cold, Grace ordered, but she was fighting a smile, water dripping from her hair like she'd been baptized. That night, Harper drew the scene. 3 people soaked, 1 confused dog, water everywhere. She labeled it Our First Flood and pinned it to Noah's wall without asking permission. Like she belonged there. Thursday morning brought the newspaper, thrown hard enough to thud against the door. Front page, below the fold. Mystery millionaire marries local waitress. A fortune built on tragedy. Grace read aloud while Rowan made coffee. He'd learned her preference: 2 sugars, splash of milk, in the mug Harper had designated as Aunt Grace's, with a purple sticky note. Sources confirm Rowan Pike, residing in Willow Creek for 3 years under assumed circumstances, inherited substantial wealth from Pike Industries. The recent marriage to Grace Ember, 29, raises questions about financial motivations and the future of our struggling town. Assumed circumstances? Grace set down the paper hard enough to rattle cups. You used your real name. But not my history. Harper looked up from her Fruit Loops. Rowan had bought 3 boxes after she'd mentioned Noah liked them. What's assumed mean? Like pretending, Grace said. But he wasn't pretending. He was just sad. Harper's spoon clinked against ceramic. People look different when they're sad, like how Mama looked different at the end. The school bus honked. Harper grabbed her backpack, not the dinosaur one that stayed boxed and safe, but her purple one held together with duct tape and determination. Wait! Rowan pulled out a different backpack from behind the counter. New, purple as February violets. This might work better. Harper's eyes went wide as saucers. For me? Purple's a brave color. That's what your mom taught Noah. She hugged him quick and fierce, then ran for the bus. Through the window, they watched her show the driver, animated in a way Grace hadn't seen since before Claire's last hospitalization. The diner that morning tested Grace like Job. Conversations stopped when she entered. Mabel slapped down the order pad without meeting her eyes, coffee already percolating with the morning's resentment. Heard you hit the jackpot, Darla from the beauty shop said, voice carrying across the diner like she was announcing bingo numbers. Heard she planned it all along, Rhonda added, stirring her coffee counterclockwise, the direction of curses, Grace's grandmother would have said. Probably knew who he was from the start. Grace poured coffee, hands steady from years of practice holding things while the world shook. Inside, her stomach churned acid and yesterday's worry. A customer accidentally knocked over his full cup as she passed. Coffee exploded across her uniform, hot enough to burn through the thin polyester. Oops, he said, not even trying to sound sincere. Grace cleaned it without comment. Changed into her spare uniform in the tiny bathroom that smelled of bleach and disappointment. Returned to find Gold Digger written in ketchup on her order pad, letters dripping like blood. The lunch rush was worse. People she'd served for 3 years looked through her like she was made of glass. Tips disappeared entirely. Someone left a penny, Lincoln, face down, the ultimate insult. At 2 o'clock, the bell chimed different. A woman Grace didn't recognize entered, wearing a coat that cost more than Grace made in a month, carrying a leather purse that probably cost more than 3 months. I'm looking for Grace Ember. The woman smiled with too many teeth. Sorry, Grace Pike now, isn't it? Every head in the diner turned like sunflowers following light. I'm Grace. Wonderful. I'm from the Northwest Tribune. Writing a feature on sudden wealth marriages. You know, young woman marrying older billionaire. Classic American story. He's 43, I'm 29. And no comment. Oh, but you've already commented. The woman held up her phone, showing a photo from that morning. Grace hugging Harper at the bus stop, Rowan visible in the doorway behind them. Picture worth 1,000 words. New family bonds over shared loss. Or maybe, calculated marriage yields quick affection. Depends on the angle, doesn't it? Grace's hands tightened on the coffee pot, knuckles white as fresh paper. The door chimed again. Rowan entered, sawdust in his hair from the mill, smelling of cedar and honest work. He took in the scene, reporter's predatory smile, Grace's rigid spine, diner's collective attention sharp as winter. We're leaving, he told Grace. My shift doesn't end until... Mabel? Rowan addressed the older woman directly. Grace quits, effective immediately. Mabel's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. She can't just...
She can. Rowan pulled out his wallet, laid $500 on the counter. 2 weeks' notice payment, plus whatever tips were stolen today. The reporter raised her phone, recording. Mr. Pike, any comment on… Aurora appeared in the doorway. She'd been in the truck, but somehow knew she was needed. The dog positioned herself between the reporter and Grace, protective as a wall. They left together, Grace still in her coffee-stained uniform, Rowan's hand at the small of her back. Not possessive, but present, steady as a fence post. In the truck, Grace's composure cracked like spring ice. I needed that job. You needed the paycheck. Different thing.
You can't just throw money at… I can. I did. He started the engine. Partnership, remember? That's what we agreed to. Friday's paper was worse. Pike fortune built on tragedy. Son's death sparked billion-dollar foundation. The article included everything. Noah's diagnosis, treatments that failed, the experimental therapies that didn't work. Even quoted unnamed sources from the California hospital about the father who wouldn't leave his dying son's bedside. Grace found Rowan on the porch at dawn, paper crumpled in his fist like he was trying to squeeze the words out of existence. Aurora whined at his feet, sensing the storm inside him. They had no right. His voice came out raw as winter wind. Harper emerged in her purple robe, too small, needed replacing. Why is everyone sad? Bad people wrote about Noah without asking, Grace explained, gentle as she could. Harper's face darkened with understanding beyond her years. Like when they wrote about Mama being weak? Said if she'd fought harder, she might have lived? Neither adult had known about that article. Small-town paper, local teacher loses her battle, implications that willpower might have changed outcomes. Yes, Rowan said. Exactly like that. Harper sat between them on the steps, small body radiating warmth. Mama said newspapers are only good for lining bird cages. That evening, they drove to the community center for the town meeting. Every parking space filled. Trucks and cars lined the street like a funeral procession. Inside, 300 faces turned as they walked down the aisle to the only empty chairs, front row, isolated, deliberate as shunning. Tom Paulson called to order with his official gavel, the one his daddy had used when he was council president. We're here to discuss the impact of recent revelations on our town's future. You mean my marriage? Rowan stood, 3 years of silence breaking like a dam. My private life? $2 billion isn't private when this town is dying, Frank Sullivan said from the back. You want me to save you? Buy the mill? Pay everyone's mortgage? You could, Vera said. Easy as breathing. I could, Rowan agreed. But what happens when it's gone? When you've spent someone else's money and nothing's actually changed? Easy to talk about change when you're not choosing between insulin and electricity, someone called out. The arguing escalated like fire finding dry wood. Accusations flew. Grace felt Harper pressing against her side, the child's breathing quickening toward an attack. Then the main doors opened. Silas entered like winter wind, expensive shoes clicking on worn wood floors. He walked down the same aisle, stopping beside his brother. You want someone to blame? Silas addressed the room. Blame me. I forced this marriage. Used manipulation, coercion, all me. Rowan turned to his brother, confusion written across his face. My son Marcus died 3 years ago, same week as Noah. Silas's voice cracked like old leather. But Noah got a foundation. Marcus got forgotten. The room absorbed this. 2 brothers, 2 dead sons. Harper stood up, 8 years old in her purple dress, voice clear as church bells. My mama died. Uncle Rowan's son died. Mr. Silas's son died. She looked around the room. Everyone here lost someone. But we're being mad at the wrong people. Eleanor started clapping from the back row, slow, deliberate. Others joined gradually, uncertain. They left together, manufactured family becoming something real. In the truck, Rowan's phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. He read it, color draining from his face like water from a bath. "What?" Grace asked. He showed her the screen. "Your son's real medical records attached. The treatment you refused. Let's discuss what really killed Noah." Rowan's thumb hovered over the attachment, like touching it might burn. The phone screen reflected his face in the truck's dome light. Hollow eyes, 3 days of stubble going gray at the edges. The expression of a man about to open a door better left closed. "Don't." Grace pulled the phone from his hand, gentle but firm as a nurse taking away something sharp. "Not here. Not with Harper watching." The child had pressed herself against Aurora in the back seat, purple dress wrinkled from the meeting, understanding enough to know someone wanted to hurt Uncle Rowan with old pain made new. The drive home stretched through darkness thick as molasses. Windshield wipers fought rain that fell sideways now, Oregon showing its temper. The unnamed sender had included a deadline. 24 hours to respond, or this goes to every newspaper in the state. At the cabin, Grace sent Harper to brush teeth and say prayers, old habits from her mama that Grace maintained like keeping a garden someone else planted. She and Rowan stood in the kitchen, phone between them on the counter like something that might explode. "Could be fake," Grace said, though her voice suggested she didn't believe it. "Or not." Rowan's finger traced the wood grain in the counter, following patterns worn by years of other people's lives. There was one treatment, experimental. Seattle Children's had 3 spots in the trial. 90% of the kids didn't make it past the first round. "You said no?" Noah said no. The words came out like pulling splinters. 6 years old, and he looked at me, clear as morning, and said, "Daddy, I'm tired. Can we stop now?" Grace's hand covered his on the counter. Not comfort exactly, but understanding. The kind that came from standing in the same dark places. Claire fought until she couldn't recognize Harper anymore. The morphine made her mean, called Harper terrible things. The baby still has nightmares about the stranger wearing her mama's face. Thunder rolled across the valley like God moving furniture. Through the window, lightning lit up the forest in snapshot bursts, trees bending but not breaking, same as folks. Rowan opened the attachment. Real medical files, Noah's, but altered. Dates changed, recommendations reversed, making it look like Rowan chose wrong when right existed. "This is plain cruel," Grace breathed. "This is Silas." Rowan set down the phone. Or someone who knows our history well enough to twist the knife just right. "Would your brother?" 3 years ago, yes. Now? I don't know who my brother is anymore. Don't know if I ever did. Harper appeared in purple pajamas with feet, the kind she was too old for but wouldn't give up. Aurora shadowed her, protective as a mother hen. "The rain sounds angry tonight," Harper said, climbing onto Grace's lap, though she was getting too big for it. As if agreeing, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then darkness complete as a mine shaft. "Power's out," Grace said, Harper's arms tightening around her neck. Rowan found flashlights by feel, muscle memory from 3 years of storms alone. The cabin felt smaller in the dancing light, shadows making walls breathe like living things. Harper's breathing quickened, heading toward panic. "Like at the hospital. When Mama—" "Not like that," Grace said firmly, rubbing Harper's back in circles the way her own mother had done. "This is just weather being weather." But the storm was building to something worse. Rowan's phone buzzed. Emergency alert, the kind that meant duck and cover, or head for high ground. Flash flood warning, Willow Creek expected to crest by morning. "School will be closed," Grace said, reading over his shoulder. Another buzz, then another. Texts flooding in fast as the water rising. Frank from the mill. "Creek's already over the Johnson Bridge. You're cut off till it goes down." Mabel. "Diner's flooded. Foot of water on Main Street." Then Eleanor. "Come see me when storm passes. Something you need to know about your father." Morning brought news through the battery radio. Harper's school wasn't just closed, it was surrounded.
12 children and 3 teachers trapped on the second floor, water still rising. "We have to help." Grace was already moving, grabbing coats and Harper's inhaler. "Harper's here, safe. That's what matters." But her friends aren't. The Morrison boy, the Chen twins, the trapped. Grace's hands shook as she zipped Harper's coat. Their parents must be. Rowan's phone rang. The caller ID showed Silas. "Don't hang up." His brother's voice came through static. "I have a boat." "Why would you?" "Because there are children trapped. Whatever you think of me, I'm not a monster." A pause filled with things unsaid. The lake house on Willow Bend, docks above floodline. Dad's old Boston whaler is still there. That's 3 miles through floodwater.
2 if we cut through Miller's Field. Meet me there in 20 minutes. Why help us? Why now? Silence stretched like taffy. Then, Marcus would have wanted me to. The ghost child's name hung between them. The cousin Noah never knew he had. Another boy who didn't get to grow up. 20 minutes, Rowan agreed. Grace grabbed his arm, fingers tight as wire. "You can't navigate that water. It's suicide." "Silas can. State champion rower in high school. Before..." He stopped. Before everything went wrong. Before their father's poison spread through the family like cancer through bones. Before your father destroyed him? Before a lot of things. Harper stood with Aurora, both of them sensing the electricity in the air that wasn't about the storm. "You're going to save them? The kids at school?" "Going to try." "Heroes try," Harper said, solemn as a judge. Mama said heroes aren't people who win. They're people who try when trying looks stupid. Miller's Field had become a lake, brown water carrying pieces of the town, someone's mailbox, a stop sign still on its pole, what looked like most of Henderson's chicken coop spinning lazy circles. Silas waited at the edge, his usual expensive suit replaced with fishing gear that looked older than both of them. The boat bobbed in the current, 16 feet of fiberglass between them and drowning. "Remember Dad teaching us to read current?" Silas asked as Rowan climbed in. "You remember him teaching. I remember watching from shore, being told I was too young. He taught you too. You just didn't know it. Watching is learning, even when it doesn't feel like it." They pushed off into the flood, Silas at the motor, Rowan working the oars for extra control. The water carried debris like a parade of loss. Porch furniture, a child's bicycle, someone's entire shed, floating intact but empty. "Port side!" Silas shouted over the motor's struggle. A full-grown pine, roots and all, swept past close enough to smell sap. Would have crushed them like stepping on crackers. The school appeared through rain, brick building turned island, faces pressed against second-story windows. Small hands waving, some frantic, some weak from waiting. "Current's too strong at the main entrance," Silas said. "Circle around to playground side where it eddies." They fought the water in wide arcs, motor coughing like an old man with pneumonia. Then it died, simply stopped, flooded out. Rowing only now. Silas grabbed the second set of oars. Together, like we used to. Brothers rowing in synchronization for the first time in 30 years. Muscle memory from summers when they were still brothers, before their father made them competitors for his approval that never came. Mrs. Ashley appeared in a window, holding something. Jump ropes and extension cords tied together into a lifeline. "Can you catch it?" she called down. Rowan stood carefully, boat rocking like a drunk man walking. The makeshift rope fell short. Second try, his fingers just missed. Third time, he caught it, rough fibers cutting into palms. "Send the smallest first," Silas instructed. "Less weight on that rope." A kindergartner appeared, crying so hard his whole body shook. Mrs. Ashley fitted him with a life jacket made from tied-together water wings and empty milk jugs. Desperate creativity that might actually work. The child descended slowly, teachers lowering him like cargo more precious than gold. Rowan caught him, passed him to Silas, who settled him in the bow with surprising gentleness. "What's your name, buddy?" Silas asked. "Tyler," the boy hiccuped. "Well, Tyler, you're brave as a lion. My son Marcus would have liked you. He was brave too." One by one, 12 children descended. The boat could only hold 8 safely. 2 trips minimum, maybe 3 with the teachers. Second trip, the current had worsened. A car floated past, windows down, interior full of muddy water like a terrarium of disaster. Silas used his expensive jacket as an extra paddle when they lost an oar to debris. "Why did Marcus die?" Rowan asked suddenly, pulling against current that wanted to take them to the ocean. "Leukemia. Fast kind. 3 months from diagnosis to—" Silas stopped rowing, water dripping from the oars like tears. "He died alone. COVID protocols. I watched through glass while machines sang him to sleep. I'm sorry." "You were with Noah the whole last day." "Yes." "Did he know? At the end?" "He knew, but he wasn't scared. Said he was going on an adventure, and I couldn't come yet. Had to stay and take care of Aurora." Silas made a sound that might have been laugh or sob, lost in rain and river noise. The third trip was for the final children and teachers. The building groaned now, first-floor windows exploding inward from pressure. They had minutes, maybe less. Miss Martinez, Harper's teacher, was last. She'd made sure every child got down safe. Halfway down, the rope, frayed from 15 descents, snapped like a gunshot. She fell into the water, surfaced, gasping. Current grabbed her immediately, pulling her away from the boat fast as running. Rowan dove without thinking. Cold shocked through him like electricity. His hand found fabric, pulled. She fought him in panic, both going under, muddy water filling mouth and nose. Then Silas was there, had anchored the boat and followed. Together, brothers hauled the teacher to safety. Back in the boat, all of them shaking like leaves, they rowed toward shore. Behind them, the school's first floor collapsed into itself with a sound like the world ending. On solid ground, someone's front lawn turned into lakefront property. Parents waited. Crying, grabbing children, gratitude so thick you could swim in it. Mrs. Ashley found Rowan, mascara running down her cheeks like war paint. "You saved them, both of you." "We did what anyone would." "No, you did what brothers do. Together." Eleanor appeared through the crowd, white hair plastered to her skull, rain making her look older and younger at the same time. She looked between Rowan and Silas, something unreadable in her expression. "Both my boys," she said quietly, "finally acting like it." Rowan felt the world tilt. "What?" She touched Silas's face, age-spotted hand, gentle as a blessing. 40 years I've waited to say that publicly. Your father made me choose, silence or losing you both." "You're Silas's mother?" Rowan stared at Eleanor. Courthouse Eleanor. Diner Eleanor. The woman who'd processed his marriage license. "And your stepmother, though your father made sure you never knew. Made me watch my son grow up calling me Mrs. Henderson." Lightning struck, close enough to taste copper. In the flash, Rowan saw his brother's face. A lifetime of hurt and fury, and maybe, just maybe, hope. "The marriage clause in the will," Eleanor continued. "Your father never wrote it. The real will splits everything equally between you." She pulled papers from inside her raincoat, somehow still dry. "But there's more. About the night Noah and Marcus died. About what your father did." Thunder crashed, drowning out her next words. But Rowan read her lips, saw the shape of words that changed everything. He was there, at both hospitals. He chose. Eleanor's living room smelled of lavender and coffee that had been sitting too long, the combination familiar as childhood. She moved through her kitchen, pulling out towels for the brothers who stood dripping on her braided rug, the one her mother had made during the Depression from old clothes. "Sit," she said, not asking. The kitchen table was covered in boxes, 40 years of documents she'd been collecting, waiting for this moment. Marriage certificates, birth records, death certificates, all filed with her careful hand at the courthouse. "Your father was at both hospitals the night the boys died." Eleanor's voice steady as her handwriting. "Noah at Sacred Heart in Portland, Marcus at Good Samaritan 20 miles away. He had to choose which grandson to be with." Rowan's wet clothes clung to him like grief itself. Beside him, Silas had gone still as a photograph. "He chose Noah," Eleanor continued. "Left Marcus to die alone while he held your hand, Rowan." The old clock on the wall ticked loud as hammering. Through the window, the floodwaters were already receding, leaving mud and debris like evidence of what had passed through. But that's not the worst part. Eleanor pulled out a letter, her father's handwriting shaky but readable. He wrote this that night, never sent it. "I have destroyed my sons differently. Silas with cruelty, Rowan with expectation. Tonight I chose between grandsons like I chose between sons. Marcus dying alone, while I hold Rowan's hand as he holds Noah's. The pills are already dissolving. By morning, I'll be gone. The coward's way, but the only way I know." Silas stood abruptly, chair scraping against linoleum. "He killed himself?" "Heart attack, officially. Money buys whatever death certificate you want." Eleanor's fingers traced the letter. "But yes, that night, while you were both with your boys, he was swallowing pills." The next morning brought men in expensive suits to Rowan's door. The Foundation's board arrived from California on a chartered plane despite the weather. "Mr. Pike." The lead lawyer didn't bother with pleasantries. "Given recent events and questions about the marriage's legitimacy, the board has voted to assume full control of the Foundation." Grace stood beside Rowan in the doorway, Harper hidden behind her legs. "You can't just take it." "Actually, we can. Moral turpitude clause. If Mr. Pike's character is in question, and marrying for financial gain qualifies, we have fiduciary duty to protect the Foundation's assets." "Those children need—" "The children will be fine. The Foundation will continue, just without Pike involvement." The lawyer handed over papers, thick as a phone book. "Sign these, transferring all rights, or we freeze everything while courts decide. Could take years." "No children helped during that time." Harper peeked around Grace's hip. "You're being mean about Noah's money." The lawyers didn't even look at her. Children were invisible to men like these. Rowan signed. Each signature felt like losing Noah again, piece by piece. After they left, he stood in the kitchen holding the pen, ink still wet on his fingers. "It's done," he said to no one. Grace touched his arm. "You did what was right. For the children." "Did I? Or did I just give up again?" The town's judgment came swift as winter wind. Without the Foundation, without billions to save them, Rowan was just the hermit who'd lied. Grace was the gold digger who'd cost them everything. Someone spray-painted "whore" on their mailbox. Grace painted over it, but the word bled through like a bruise. At Harper's school, children whispered. Parents pulled their kids away when she approached. The Morrison boy who she'd drawn pictures with wouldn't sit with her at lunch anymore. "Why are they being mean?" Harper asked, holding her lunch tray in the cafeteria with nowhere to sit. "Sometimes people need someone to blame," Mrs. Ashley said gently, making space at her desk for Harper to eat. The mill let Rowan go. Not officially fired, that might bring lawyers. Just no more shifts available. Frank Sullivan couldn't meet his eyes when he delivered the news. "Nothing personal," Frank said, though everything about it was personal. 3 days passed, then 5, then a week. Rowan stopped eating unless Grace stood over him, stopped talking except single-word answers, stopped everything except sitting in Noah's room, reading the same drawings over and over like scripture in a language he'd forgotten. "You have to eat something." Grace stood in the doorway with soup that would go cold like all the others. "Not hungry." "Harper's scared. She thinks you're disappearing like her mama did. Tell her I'm fine. I don't lie to her."
She left the soup. It congealed into something unrecognizable, like everything else in the cabin. Aurora stopped eating too, lay by Rowan's feet, the dog's ribs starting to show through her coat. They were both choosing to fade, together. Harper slipped drawings under the door, purple butterflies with bandages, stick figures holding hands under rainbow skies.
Each one labeled, "Please come back," in careful letters that got shakier as days passed. Day 9. Grace stood in the main room, throwing clothes into suitcases with sharp, angry movements. "What are you doing?" Rowan emerged from Noah's room, blinking in the afternoon light like something pulled from underground. "Leaving? The year's not up. We agreed. We agreed to survive. You're not surviving. You're dying slowly and taking Aurora with you." She slammed the suitcase shut hard enough to break the zipper. "I won't watch another person I love disappear into grief." The word love hung in the air like smoke. Should have mattered. Should have changed something. But Rowan felt nothing except the exhaustion of standing upright. "Where will you go?" "Eleanor offered her spare room, till I figure something out." Grace wouldn't look at him. "I'll take Aurora too. She doesn't deserve to die just because you've decided to. She's Noah's dog. Noah's dead." The words came out hard as stones. He's been dead 3 years. Aurora's alive, Harper's alive, I'm alive. You're the only one who doesn't know if he wants to be. Harper appeared with her purple backpack, the new one Rowan had bought. She'd decorated it with butterfly stickers that were already peeling at the edges. "Are we leaving Uncle Rowan?" Her voice small as a whisper. "We're giving him space. Space to be sad? Space to decide if he wants to live or just exist." Harper approached Rowan slowly, like approaching a spooked animal. Held out a folded paper, purple, of course. "For when you're ready." She hugged his legs quickly, then ran to Grace. They left with Aurora following reluctant, the dog looking back every few steps like maybe Rowan would follow. He didn't. The cabin emptied of sound except rain on the roof and the clock Noah used to count when medicine made sleep impossible. 3 years he'd lived in this silence. Now it felt like drowning in air. Rowan finally opened Harper's paper as darkness fell. A drawing. Their manufactured family under a Christmas tree that hadn't existed, might never exist. But in the picture, his figure was becoming transparent, fading at the edges like old photographs. Harper had drawn herself reaching for his dissolving hand, fingers just missing. At the bottom, in purple crayon pressed so hard it tore through paper in places, "Please don't disappear like Mommy did." Rowan's knees gave out. Hit the floor hard enough to jar teeth. The paper crumpled in his fist. In the corner of Harper's drawing, barely visible, she'd added 2 angels, one labeled Noah, one labeled Marcus. They were holding hands, watching the family below with sad faces. "Even angels get lonely," Harper had written beside them. The sobs came without warning. 3 years of contained grief erupting like floodwater through a dam. Rowan crawled to the couch, pulled himself up, body shaking with sobs that wouldn't stop. When exhaustion finally ended the tears, he found something on the coffee table. The wedding ring, his father's ring that Grace had worn, that had been too big, that she'd left behind. Inside the band, an inscription he'd never noticed, worn but readable. "Love survives." His father's wedding ring, from the marriage that produced him but destroyed Silas. Love that had survived as cruelty, as manipulation, as damage passed down like a cursed heirloom. But also, Grace's touch when she checked his pulse, Harper's drawings, Aurora's loyalty, even Silas pulling him from the flood. Love survived. Changed, damaged, but still breathing. Through the window, headlights swept across the yard. Not 1 car, 3. Silas's truck, followed by 2 others. Silas entered without knocking, carrying a box. Behind him, Eleanor. Behind her, someone Rowan didn't expect. The reporter from the diner, the one who'd threatened to expose everything. "We need to talk," Silas said. About what really happened to our sons. The reporter held up a folder, thick with papers. These aren't Noah's medical records. They're Marcus's, and they show something the hospital's been hiding. Eleanor's face had gone pale as paper. Both boys were in the same experimental trial, same drug, same time. The drug that killed them wasn't supposed to be given to children, the reporter finished. The pharmaceutical company knew. The hospital knew. Your father knew. Rowan stared at them, the words not making sense. What are you saying? I'm saying, Silas's voice broke. Our sons were murdered, and our father knew who did it. The reporter, her name was Linda Morse, Rowan realized, seeing her press badge now, spread medical files across the coffee table like dealing cards in a game nobody wanted to play. Each page stamped with hospital letterhead, dates circled in red ink. I started investigating for a scandal story, Linda said, voice different now, professional instead of predatory. Rich man's secret marriage, hidden billions. But then I found these. She pointed to a drug name highlighted in yellow, RX-471. Experimental cancer treatment, adult trial only. FDA explicitly rejected pediatric use, too dangerous for developing organs. Her finger moved to another document. But here's Noah's chart. And here's Marcus's. Same drug, same dosage, same date started. Silas picked up Marcus's file, hands shaking enough to make the paper whisper. The consent form I signed said, approved experimental therapy. Mine too, Rowan said, remembering the stack of papers, signing anything that might save Noah. You were lied to. Linda pulled out another folder. This is from a whistleblower at the pharmaceutical company. They knew. They needed pediatric data to expand their market. Chose terminal children whose parents would try anything. Eleanor had moved to the window, staring out at the darkness. Gerald knew. Everyone turned to look at her. Your father was on the pharmaceutical company's board, joined 6 months before the boys got sick. She pressed her hand flat against the glass. I found the papers in his study after he died. Couldn't make sense of them then. He knew they were experimenting on our sons? Silas's voice came out raw. Worse. Eleanor turned around, tears cutting channels through her powder. He suggested which children? Told them Noah and Marcus were perfect candidates. Terminal enough that deaths wouldn't raise questions. The room tilted. Rowan grabbed the arm of the couch, fingers digging into fabric. You're saying he murdered them? The words felt impossible in his mouth. I'm saying he traded them. Eleanor pulled out one more document from her purse. Stock options, $17 million worth, dated the week after both boys died. Payment for successful trial data. Silas made a sound like being punched, dropped into a chair, Marcus's medical file crumpling in his grip. That's why he killed himself, Rowan said slowly. Not grief, guilt. The coward's way, Eleanor said. Left you two to hate each other while he escaped judgment. Linda gathered the papers carefully. I have enough to expose everything. The pharmaceutical company, the hospital, your father's involvement. But it won't bring them back. It'll destroy the foundation, Silas said. Everything connected to father's money will be investigated, frozen. The foundation's already gone, Rowan reminded him. Board took it. No. Eleanor pulled out her phone, showed them an email. They're reconsidering. Bad publicity from the flood rescue. Heroes save children, then lose foundation? Doesn't play well in the news. Through the window, more headlights. Grace's borrowed car from Eleanor. She entered without knocking. Everyone did now, like the cabin had become public property. Harper followed, Aurora at her side. The dog went straight to Rowan, pressing against his legs like she'd never left. We saw the cars, Grace said carefully. Everything okay? Uncle Rowan's crying, Harper observed, matter of fact. He was. Hadn't noticed. Tears running steady as rain. They killed them, he told Grace. The drug company, the hospital, my father. They killed Noah and Marcus for money. Grace's nursing training kicked in. She scans the documents spread across the table, understanding quick as reading vitals. Her face went white, then red, then white again. Those bastards. She caught herself, looked at Harper. Those evil men. Mama said evil was the wrong word, Harper said, studying the adults with those too old eyes. Said broken people break other people, like dominoes. Linda Morse had been typing on her phone. I can have this story live in an hour. National pickup by morning. The pharmaceutical company's stock will tank. Executives will face charges. The hospital will be investigated. And Noah becomes a headline, Rowan said quietly. Dead boy in drug scandal. That's not what I want him remembered for.
Marcus either, Silas added. The brothers looked at each other. 3 years of hate dissolving into something else. Shared loss, shared betrayal, shared understanding that their father had orchestrated everything, even their grief. There's another way, Eleanor said. She looked older than her 81 years, but her voice stayed steady. The foundation doesn't have to be about Gerald's money. It can be about truth. What do you mean? Grace asked. Expose everything, but through the foundation. Use it to protect other children from experimental trials. Make Noah and Marcus's deaths mean something. The board won't agree to that, Rowan said. The board doesn't have to. Eleanor smiled, sharp as winter. I've been keeping records for 40 years. Every document that passed through the courthouse, including the real incorporation papers for the foundation. Gerald wasn't the sole founder. She pulled out a yellow document. I was co-founder. My name's on the original paperwork. He had it amended later, wrote me out like he wrote me out of everything. But amendments can be challenged. Silas stood up slowly. You're saying you could take control? I'm saying we could, all of us, as a family. She looked at Harper. Even the little one. We'll need someone to keep us honest. Harper beamed. I can draw pictures for the sick kids. For the first time in 3 years, maybe longer, Rowan felt something besides grief. Not hope exactly, but the possibility of hope. We'd have to work together, he said to Silas. We just saved 12 children from drowning together. How much harder could paperwork be? They actually smiled at each other. Small, tentative, but real. Linda Morse stood up. So what do you want me to do? Sit on the story? No, Grace said, surprising everyone. Publish it, but not as scandal, as truth. 2 fathers lost their sons to corporate greed. Now they're making sure it never happens again. That's not as sexy as a scandal. It's better, Harper said. It's what Mama called a redemption story. Those are the best kind. Aurora barked once, tail wagging for the first time since Rowan had stopped eating. The dog walked to the door, looked back expectantly. She needs to go out, Grace said. No. Rowan stood up, legs shaky but working. She wants us to follow. She used to do this with Noah when he had something to show me. They all followed the dog out into the night. The flood had receded, leaving the yard muddy but walkable. Aurora led them to the back of the property, to a spot Rowan had never explored. There, in the beam of Silas's flashlight, stood 2 small oak saplings, tagged with a date, 3 years ago, and a note in plastic sleeve. Rowan pulled out the note, recognized the handwriting immediately. Noah's kindergarten printing. For when I'm gone. One for me, and one for my cousin I haven't met yet. Daddy says trees grow even when people don't. Love, Noah. Silas made a sound between sob and laugh. He knew about Marcus? No, Eleanor said quietly. But Gerald brought him here once, when you were in California. Told him he had a cousin somewhere who was sick too. Noah insisted on planting trees for both of them. The saplings had survived 3 years of neglect, flood, everything. Still small, still fragile, but growing. We should build something here, Grace said. A memorial or a playground. Harper interrupted. For the kids who get better.
So they have somewhere to play that isn't the hospital. As they stood there in the muddy yard, looking at 2 trees planted by a 6-year-old who somehow knew more about love than any of the adults, a new set of headlights appeared. Not a car, a van. Channel 7 News. Did you call them? Rowan asked Linda.
No, I don't know how they...
The van door opened. The foundation's board president stepped out, followed by cameras already rolling. Mr. Pike, he said, smooth as oil, we need to discuss your father's crimes and what they mean for your family's future. The board president, David Morrison, according to his monogrammed cufflinks, stood in the muddy yard like a man who'd never gotten his shoes dirty before tonight. The camera light turned everything harsh white, making shadows dance across faces like old home movies. Turn that off, Rowan said. Public interest, Mr. Pike. Your father's crimes. My father's dead. Silas stepped forward, blocking the camera with his body. Whatever he did died with him. Morrison smiled, the kind that lawyers practiced in mirrors. Actually, it didn't. Fraud carries past death. The Foundation's assets derive from criminal enterprise. We'll need to liquidate, investigate, protect ourselves from liability. You mean protect yourselves from us, Grace said. Harper pressed against her side. The board has voted. Dissolution proceedings begin tomorrow. Morrison pulled out papers, official seals catching the light. Unless... That word hung in the air like a fishhook. Unless what? Eleanor asked, though her face suggested she already knew. Unless the Pike family agrees to walk away. Complete separation. No claims, no lawsuits, no public statements. Morrison's eyes moved between the brothers. You get to keep your father's crimes quiet. We get to rebrand the Foundation without the Pike name. Harper tugged on Rowan's sleeve. Are they stealing Noah's Foundation? Trying to, Rowan said. The camera operator had been filming, despite Silas's blocking. Linda Morse stood beside him, her phone recording too. Tomorrow's news forming in real time. You need our signatures, Silas said slowly. Both of us. That's why you're really here. And Mrs. Henderson's. Morrison looked at Eleanor. Oh, yes, we know about the original incorporation papers. Your lawyer, Roberts, isn't it? Made inquiries this afternoon. Eleanor's hand found her chest, pressing flat where her heart worked overtime. You knew all along. About me? About the boys? About the drug trial? We suspected, but pursuing it would have meant giving up control. Morrison shrugged, movement barely visible in his tailored coat. Business is about calculated risks. Aurora growled, low and steady. Not at Morrison, but at something beyond the lights. More headlights approaching through the dark. 3 trucks pulled up. Frank Sullivan from the mill, Tom Paulson from the council. Behind them 2 more cars, then more. Half the town, drawn by news van lights like moths. What's going on here? Frank asked, boots squelching through mud. Private Foundation business, Morrison said. Nothing's private when it happens in our town. Tom moved beside Frank, others filling in behind them. These men saved our children today. Whatever's happening here concerns all of us. Mabel appeared, still in her diner apron. Grace Ember served me coffee for 3 years. Never complained, never missed a shift, even when her sister was dying. I judged her wrong. We all did. Mrs. Ashley, Harper's teacher, pushed through the crowd. Mr. Pike donated every cent he had to save other people's children while grieving his own. That's not a crime. That's a calling. Morrison looked at the gathering crowd, calculating odds like a computer. This doesn't concern... Read it, Linda Morse said suddenly, holding up her phone. The story's already live. Not about scandal, about truth. She showed the screen to the camera, which zoomed in. The headline clear in the harsh light. Brothers united by tragedy fight pharmaceutical crimes. 17 minutes ago, Linda continued. 3 million views. Climbing. Morrison's phone buzzed, then again, then continuously like angry bees. That would be the other board members, Eleanor said mildly. They don't like surprises, especially ones that affect stock prices. You orchestrated this, Morrison said. No, Rowan said quietly. We just told the truth. Finally. Harper pulled free from Grace, walked straight to Morrison despite Grace trying to catch her. The child looked up at the man, purple pajamas visible under her coat, rain boots too big for her feet. My mama died, she said clearly. Uncle Rowan's son died. Mr. Silas's son died. Mrs. Eleanor lost everyone. But they're trying to help other kids not die. Why are you being mean about it? The camera caught everything. Morrison backed away from the child like she was dangerous. The board will reconsider, he said quickly, given the circumstances. No, Rowan's voice carried across the yard. We don't want your board. He looked at Silas, silent question asked and answered in a glance. We're starting over, Silas said. New foundation, clean money. Eleanor as director, since she's the only one father never corrupted. I'm 81 years old, Eleanor protested. Then you better teach us fast, Grace said. She moved to stand with the brothers, Harper's hand in hers, Aurora completing the circle. Morrison retreated to the news van, already on his phone, damage control in real time. The camera operator kept filming as he drove away, foundation lawyers following like a funeral procession. The townspeople remained. Frank Sullivan cleared his throat. About the jobs, the mill. We were wrong to blame you. We were scared, Tom added. Fear makes folks stupid. Fear makes folks human, Rowan said. One by one, the townspeople approached, not with apologies exactly, but with offerings. Mabel brought coffee in thermoses. Someone had sandwiches. Mrs. Chen from the school had blankets. Like an impromptu wake for boys they'd never met, but were somehow mourning together. As the crowd thinned, leaving just family, the word felt right now, Harper tugged Rowan's hand. The trees need water, she said, pointing to Noah's saplings. They walked together to the spigot. Harper held the hose while Rowan turned it on, water soaking into earth around the young oak's roots. Trees know how to wait, Eleanor said. Through drought, flood, everything. They just keep reaching up. Noah would have liked that, Rowan said. Marcus too, Silas added. 6 months later. The new foundation center opened where Hank's Hardware used to be. Nothing fancy, donated paint, volunteer labor, Frank Sullivan's mill workers doing carpentry on weekends. The sign read simple, Noah and Marcus Memorial Foundation. Every child matters. Eleanor ran it from her kitchen table mostly, Harper as her assistant after school. The child had become the unofficial reviewer of aid applications, drawing purple butterflies on the approved ones. The reporter's story had led to investigations, 3 pharmaceutical executives facing charges, hospital protocols changed nationwide. The Pike fortune, frozen in legal battles, didn't matter anymore. The town had raised enough through bake sales and benefit dinners to help 47 children so far. Grace graduated nursing school on a Thursday. Rowan and Silas sat together in the auditorium, Samuel babbling on Rowan's lap, the baby born from that night of comfort after Harper's hospital scare, when grief had made them reach for life. Mama! Harper pointed as Grace walked across the stage. Not Aunt anymore. Mama. The word had changed gradually, like seasons. The real wedding happened under the oak trees, which had grown enough to provide small shade. Harper spread purple petals with theatrical seriousness. Aurora, gray now around her muzzle, carried the rings on her collar. Eleanor officiated. She'd kept her online ordination active just in case. Do you, Rowan, take Grace, not for insurance, not for foundations, not for any reason except love? I do. Do you, Grace, take Rowan, his grief and his growth, his past and his future? All of him.
They kissed while Harper cheered and Samuel tried to eat purple petals, and the whole town, applauded from lawn chairs they'd brought themselves. Silas gave the toast at the diner reception. My brother and I learned to hate from our father, but our sons, his voice caught, steadied. Our sons taught us to love, even after they were gone, especially after.
That night, after purple cake and dancing to the old jukebox Mabel had finally fixed, they stood by the oak trees. 2 feet tall now, growing. Harper had made a sign, posted between them. Noah and Marcus Pike Memorial Playground, coming soon. Think they'd like it? She asked. They'd love it, both brothers said together. Aurora barked once, tail wagging, not at shadows or ghosts, at the future, growing slowly from the ground they'd watered with tears. Through the diner window, the whole town celebrated inside. Not the ending anyone had planned, but the beginning everyone needed. Epilogue. 1 year later. Samuel took his first steps between the oak trees, Harper coaching him while Grace and Rowan watched from the new bench Frank had built. Silas pushed the first swing they'd installed, empty but waiting. Other kids will play here, Harper explained to Samuel. Kids who were sick but got better. The baby didn't understand, but he laughed anyway, reaching for purple butterflies, real ones now, drawn by the garden Grace had planted. The foundation had helped 200 children, not billions, not thousands, but 200 who mattered. Eleanor sat in her chair, watching it all. 83 now, moving slower but still filing papers at the courthouse 3 days a week, still keeping records, still making things official. Was it worth it? She asked the air, maybe asking Gerald, maybe the boys, maybe God. The wind through oak leaves sounded like children laughing. Answer enough. I need to tell you why I shared this story about Rowan and Grace. See, I lost my grandson last spring, not to cancer, just a car accident on Highway 101. Wet roads, 17 years old. The grief made me mean for a while, like Silas, made me disappear into myself, like Rowan. Then I saw Harper's purple butterflies drawn on the memorial fence where it happened. Some child I don't even know left them there with a note. Angels get lonely too. That's when I understood. We're all walking around carrying invisible Noahs and Marcuses. Every bitter person at the diner, every hermit at the mill. Grace knew it when she married for insurance but stayed for love. Harper knew it when she said broken people break people like dominoes. Eleanor knew it, keeping records for 40 years, waiting for the right moment to make things official. Even Aurora knew, bringing that red ball every morning at 6:47, keeping faith with ghosts. We don't heal from grief. We grow around it, like those oak trees growing together, roots tangled, reaching up anyway. Disclaimer. This is a work of fiction, created solely for entertainment purposes. This story does not condone, encourage, or promote any form of violence or harmful behavior. All characters and events are products of the author's imagination, and any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental.